Hey everyone, welcome back to Path of Exile, and in today's build guide, we're gonna go over a Cyclone custom crit assassin. If you are a regular around these parts, you already know about my custom crit quote-unquote setup, as we are not doing a cost priest build, but rather a two-handed sword with Wave of Conviction and Purifying Flame as the spells that we're gonna trigger on a critical strike. However, with the min-maxing capabilities we've got this league, I decided to take this home recipe one step further, and the end result is actually a lot of fun and pretty powerful. And you'll see that from the assorted gameplay that I've got in store for you guys today. But before we go any further, hey, if you are new around here, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us on the channel. Otherwise, a rating and a comment help the content get spread out to the masses. Also, this video is gonna be a little bit longer than the usual, and that is because there are some things about this character that I wanna point out, but also because we're gonna get a bit technical about the entire deal. Though, if you wanna skip the jabber and jump straight into the boss gameplay, you can do that by following the timestamps on screen, or in the comments below, or in the description below, or you know, the divisions to the video that YouTube does nowadays. So with all of that said, let's actually begin this character's, shindig. So, this is a level 95 assassin, and I don't think that you need to go this high, and at level 93 that should be more than enough. But I pushed to 95 because he was relatively easy to play with, and also because I wanted to take Sadist in this cluster jewel setup over here. We're gonna go over these cluster jewels and these cluster jewels in a little bit, so do not sweat it. Also, for bandit choices we are taking Alira, not only because of the crit multi, but also because of the resistances, as we wanna have an easier time getting those covered. So with that said, we're actually gonna begin this entire ordeal with the cluster jewels, as there are two notes I wanna point out specifically. The first one being Unwavering Focus, which we are gonna use on two cluster jewels, medium cluster jewels. Unwavering Focus gives you 40% chance to avoid getting stunned while channeling, and alongside Heart of Oak near the ranger start, this means that we have 100% chance to avoid getting stunned while channeling. This is important because Cyclone got changed at the beginning of this league, and you are no longer stun immune while channeling. The other node I wanted to point out in these guys, the medium cluster jewels with the channeling stuff, is Precise Focus, which is giving you crit chance and crit multi while channeling. This also applies to our spells, so there is literally no reason to combine it alongside Unwavering Focus. The other medium cluster jewel in this setup is a cursed one with Evil Eye and Lord of Drought for Flammability curse effect, and Evil Eye to blind enemies that are not cursed, but also to make it so that enemies that are cursed take 5% increased damage. Now for the large cluster jewels, the first one has Lord of Drought and Corrosive Elements. I am reusing this guy from the last build, which was the Hollow Palm Technique Chieftain, and the Corrosive Elements isn't that mandatory. In fact, I'm pretty sure, since Wave of Conviction already applies exposure on hit, I don't really think the Corrosive Elements exposure even works in tandem, like they do not work together. I'm 100% sure that's the mechanic, but if you think it's otherwise, let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, we want Lord of Drought and maybe another node if you don't want to use this guy. As for the other cluster jewel, we are using Doriani's Lesson, to get some life leech, and we're also using Vengeful Commander because we are using Anger in this skill setup. But we're also using Anger because there are some things that we are gonna do with a Watcher's Eye that are gonna enable us to deal even more damage. So about those custom crit mechanics that I wanted to talk about. First, we wanna make sure that we are as close to 100% accuracy so that we always land hits on enemies. Also, we wanna make sure that our critical strike chance is as close to 100% so that we're always critting. And this is gonna be possible thanks to the Consecrated Ground from Purifying Flame, the Diamond Flask, the power charges on critical strike, and the inspiration charges and Precise Focus from our cluster jewel, which is giving us some crit chance while channeling. While not represented on your character's card over here, we are pretty much sitting at something like 92-93 crit chance, and in practice that means that we're gonna be critting as often, if not always. However, the most important thing that I want to talk about is your attack speed threshold. So the attack speed threshold that I want to talk about is pretty much tied to the internal cooldown of the custom crit gem, which is gonna dictate how many attacks we can have per second that are gonna be able to land a critical strike, or rather cast a spell on a critical strike. This number on regular and optimal conditions is 6 to 6.06 attacks per second, or something like that according to people who have tested this mechanic further. However, since we are firing 2 spells of our custom crit setup, this means that we gotta double down on that threshold and instead aim towards 12.12 or as close to 12.12. We cannot go above that number or else we're gonna start skipping casts as we attack enemies, and that is effectively gonna chop down our DPS massively. And in regards to that, I've built this character's attack speed with frenzy charges in mind, with tailwind from my boots from a level 12 ancestral protector, and also a cinder swallow urn alongside withering step or elusive from our ascendancy. That is gonna make it so that we've got as close to 12.12 attacks per second, but not going above it, and that is gonna allow us to pretty much dish out as much damage as humanly possible. We can push for more attack speed if we've got a cooldown recovery speed modifier on our boots or belt, or both, but that is gonna require additional investment, and that's also another topic for another time. And for now, your entire goal with this character is to get as close to 12 attacks per second, 12.12 if you wanna get technical, but also not go above it. The moment you go above that attack speed, you're gonna completely brick your custom crit setup, and you do not want that. So make sure that you are as close to that number so that you are dealing as much damage as humanly possible. So now let us quickly go over the gear in this character, and for that the weapon is first. The weapon is an exquisite blade with custom crit intrinsically, attack speed, crit chance, +2 level of socket support gems, and increased spell damage. I crafted mine using the garden, using the reforge with a critical modifier, and crit modifiers are more common, until I got what you see on the screen right now, and it was workable enough so that I could also benchcraft some stuff. Optimally, I would rather have +1 level of socketed gems instead of the increased spell damage, but that didn't happen, so yeah. Moving on to the chest plate, we are using an Assassin's Garb instead of the Astral Plate that I keep, showcasing in every single build nowadays. But don't worry, the next character is gonna totally use that Astral Plate, so do not miss it that much. But yeah, this Assassin's Garb has life, enemies killed explode, attacks have 1.4% to crit chance, and resistances. We want the attack crit and the enemies killed explode because we do not have any other monster detonation mechanic in this character, but also because we want to be as close to the 100% crit chance in practice, and that modifier on the body armor is gonna enable us to do so. So yeah, get something as close to this if possible. For the helmet, we've got a helmet that has Consecrated Ground from Purifying Flame applies 9% increased damage taken to enemies, alongside being Warlord influenced, life, crit multi, a maximum power charge, some resistances, and more life. I crafted this myself by getting an uninfluenced base and applying a Warlord Exile, and then reforging with critical modifiers, and crit modifiers are more common in the garden, until I got something that was workable and slowly got it into the point that you see on screen right now. I recommend doing the exact same thing because something similar I don't think it exists, and if it does, it's probably expensive as hell. So yeah. Moving on to the amulet, it is a Warlord influenced amulet with crit chance, spell damage, life, a resist, I was gonna say some resists, but it's not, it's a single resist, a minimum frenzy charge, and gain Physa's extra fire. I crafted this myself as well. I got the amulet with only life, the lightning resistance, the crit chance, and I think some defense modifiers, which I was able to remove, and then I added a caster modifier until I got the spell damage, and then slammed a Warlord Exile for the Physa's extra fire. And I allocated Divine Fury, which is this guy over here, which is converting 25% of physical damage from spells into fire damage. and that is going to go hand in hand with our gloves, which have fire conversion, life, a resist, accuracy, and I crafted crit chance and elemental damage if you've dealt a crit chance recently. This way we convert 100% of Purifying Flames damage to fire and 75% of Wave Conviction's damage to fire. The last remaining 25% of Wave Conviction is lightning, and that does not need conversion. So yeah. Make sure this combination is doable between your amulet and your gloves. Moving on to the belt, it is a Elder Influence Stygian Vice with Global Fist damage, life, increased life, resistances, and I crafted more resistances. You can also use a Hunter belt or a Warlord belt, but in the case of a Hunter belt you won't have the Global Fist damage, and in the case of a Warlord belt you won't have the increased life or the Global Fist, but you will be able to get the fire damage or the global damage. I did this myself because it is pretty much the best option for DPS and defenses wise, which is why my belt is Elder Influenced. The jewel on the belt has life, fist damage to spells, and some strength that is required in order to equip the weapon and some of the gems. The boots are two-toned boots with life, movement speed, resistances, and tailwind, and they were the boots that were used by my Cyclone champion. I decided to reuse them over here because, for fun really, but make sure that you've got similar if not the same modifiers, and I recommend crafting it yourself using speed modifiers or critical modifiers on the garden, because something similar to this is gonna be pretty expensive. Okay, so finally in the gear department of this character we've got the rings and the flasks, but I wanna point out the rings specifically because we've got a couple of rather obscure modifiers that are pretty important for the character. For example, one of the rings has spell damage, flammability on hit, life, some attack speed, a minimum frenzy charge that is crafted through the bench, and the base has some implicit resistances. However, flammability is normally a Warlord influenced modifier, and we've got it over here thanks to the fact that certain nodes in Delve can drop rings with curses on hit, and in between those curses is flammability. If you get a ring like that, you can slam a Crusader Exile and hopefully get spell damage. If you do not get spell damage, you can remove whatever modifier through the garden and then augment or remove caster modifiers until you get your spell damage, which is how I got my ring, and I recommend getting something similar on your build. The other ring is Warlord influenced, and it has Fizz as extra fire thanks to an essence of Hysteria, some life, crit multi, chaos res, a minimum frenzy charge, and cold res as the implicit. Now this is important because I slammed essences of Hysteria until I got Fizz as extra fire, and from there on out I used the crafting bench to apply crit chance as a crafted modifier on the ring, and then used the garden to remove a critical modifier and add a new critical modifier, and that is going to force a permanent crit multi modifier on your ring. That means that you can then craft your minimum frenzy charge and then work on the rest of the modifiers that you require on the ring, which in my case were the chaos res and the life. Even though the life modifier is rather pathetic in mine, and that is the result of layers upon layers of RNG, I could still remove that life and re-add more life in the future if I were to get more life modifiers on the garden. But yeah, try to get something similar to this in the long run. Finally, for flasks, we've got a Diamond Flask, an Atsiri's Promise, and a Cinder Swallow Urn. If you've got a Bottle Faith, that replaces the Diamond Flask, and the Bottle Faith is gonna give you one hell of a lot of DPS instead of whatever the Diamond Flask currently gives you. So if you can, try to get that. If you cannot, a Diamond Flask is more than enough. Finally, to wrap up the character, we're gonna talk about the gem setups and also certain jewels on the tree. On the sword, we've got Cyclone, Wave of Conviction, Purifying Flame, Awakened Added Fire Damage, Empower, and Inspiration. Remember that Cast on Crit is intrinsically inside the sword. On the body armor, we've got Flame Dash and Second Wind. On the helmet, we've got Withering Step and Vaal Righteous Fire, both of them linked to increased duration and Arcane Surge. However, this is mostly so that we get 7 seconds of Arcane Surge when we tap, your Withering Step, and that is gonna help us on our clear and single target. on the gloves we've got a level 12 Ancestral Protector linked to Combustion, a Portal Gem, and also a Summon Flame Golem alone without being linked to Combustion, so that it remains relatively cheap. And on the boots we've got Anger, Precision, Herald of Ash, and Enlighten level 3. And finally, for the jewels in the tree, we've got a Watcher's Eye with crit multiplier while affected by Anger, alongside attack speed while affected by Precision. If you cannot get something like this, something with just crit multi with Anger or crit multi with Precision is more than enough. The attack speed can be gotten on the rest of the jewels on the tree. So for those jewels, some of them have Strength, Accuracy, Crit Multi, Life, others have Accuracy, Strength, Crit Chance, Life, others have Attack Speed, Life, Crit Multi, and it's gonna depend on the stuff that you are lacking on your character, but also stuff that you can cram into the jewel. For example, this guy over here that has Crit Multi with Fire Skills, Crit Chance and Accuracy, Strength and Life, it had an open prefix when I found it, and using Augment Fire and remove an Augment Fire, I was able to force a crit multiplier with fire skills, as those are prefixes, and I personally recommend doing the exact same thing, because at the end of the day that is gonna save you a couple of Chaos Orbs or Exiles in this case, and is gonna help us deal even more damage in the long run. And that pretty much concludes the gear portion of this character, which means now you get to see some bosses get deleted. And with that said, I wanna thank you for watching today's video, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a rating and a comment so that we can defeat the YouTube algorithm. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching the video, I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you on the next one. Have a nice rest of your weekend, and peace out.
What's this? A real challenge? You've finally caught my attention. Die.
Your lives are meaningless! Glorious flames!
The others found strength in their projections. They became reliant on them. I am not so foolish. Die.
Is doomed!
Be silent. Die.
Watch beauty crumble! Pointless! Pointless!
Is life really interesting enough to warrant all this pain? Die.
Is doomed!
Just need a moment to catch my breath.
Why run? What's the point? Obliteration!
The edge of death, my heart races. I am alive. You will long for
Non-existence! Everlasting fire! Die!
just need a moment to catch my breath.
To me, Exile, quickly!
My order.
Buy me some time!
Insignificant. Behold the face of your unmaking.
Father, it's me. Let me help you.
The horror must be stopped. Obstacles destroyed.
Stay close.
Irrelevant! These memories are mine. I cannot lose them.
They lied to you, Father. I'm your true memory.
To save the future, the past must be sacrificed. A howl
We need to
from the
close
void.
this.
Embraced by misery.